Oh, how good is that? Yeah. I was. It's interesting because we just had our podcast that we were talking about Abelgate. Abelgate is the Pope is your boss, and that's far away. Abilene is the paradox that goes on underneath that, so it's we the people where you and I are, an opinion that we have. Only case law that's made is on the right side of the court, and that then gets passed down into law to make opinion, where that is to become policy and things. And this is missing where the whole picture is. Most of the news that people get is down at the ankle level about a corpse and spending where a corpse is, and nobody's questioning or looking behind to see who owns that corpse itself, you see, the corpse of a nation. And great forces are more off terrain and not where a nation is and beyond the nation itself. And a lot of banana republics most would look at and see have happened. People would be hard pressed to say that didn't occur or isn't. But I think, like in the last podcast, like we were talking about getting to talk about paradox, which a paradox is sort of you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. That's a good example of a paradox. And that we could talk a little bit about some paradox, so quite extraordinary, in fact. Anyway, but your capacity, or mine, or anyone's ability to be able to put things into a like category, and that's what IQ is really. So, you're putting it around and around and this sort of thing. So you're putting things into like categories. So the IQ where America is, there's 46 nations, of course, which we talked about, which is above the IQ that is in America on average, which is 86 at the moment. And that's been shrinking. So it never was 86, it was higher than that in the past. IQ is sort of really powerfully an economic indicator of discrimination, honest, straight up, pretty much. You've got an IQ of 42.9, I think, something in Nepal, and maybe 47 or something in Guatemala. And you've got a loss of several points over recent years and generations. And so language and perception and spatial memory and your skill to add up and look at things and science and those things improve someone's IQ, and you're looking and considering things. Yet a small amount of knowledge can be not enough, and yet how poor science is where people are themselves. And so a lot of superstition exists for sure. So high confidence, that somebody has a very high confidence, generally is the worst. Typically where someone really doesn't have much knowledge, they can often be compensating to feel that they must have much more confidence, and they have a higher confidence. But higher confidence doesn't work over time. It's called woebegone, Lake Woebegone. It's like a lake that is supposed to come to be there and be there, but it's Lake Woebegone. It's like Panama Lake, which always would be filled, and through geoengineering and things, the lake didn't get any more water, and so it's sort of like asymmetric warfare and all sorts of things are going on. And could people say that that's not so? It's like, oh my God, I think so. There's 25% of the top ability to be able to influence others, basically, and it's sort of a lot where is going on where people have Lake Woebegone in there. It's called the Lake Woebegone effect. But then also Dunning-Kruger is where someone, like we were just saying, could have really high confidence about things end up compensating for what they don't know because they could think to themselves, oh, I should be confident. And that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where someone put lemon juice on their face because they thought that the cameras would not be able to pick their face up because they had lemon juice on their face. And they were so confident about that, in fact. And two scientists then studied how could that be so, that somebody thought they could just put lemon juice on their face and they wouldn't be seen by cameras. And then they robbed a bank. And so it sort of really, Dunning and Kruger were the ones that actually looked into that. And they saw an effect, of course, which was a lack of awareness as to what somebody could know or what they might know, and a sense of competence and confidence and what depth of strategy someone might have, where Dunning-Kruger says really no depth to any strategy. There's plenty of confidence in things, and but a lack of awareness proper. But yet, a good speaker really could really show proper a proper led sort of confidence, of course, but not certainly be overconfident. But yet, all proper communication skills really sort of impact someone's career and their politics, but also to the very things that goes on where you are in your body. Having a bit of a lag won't be gone because it sort of relates to overestimating someone's ability to be able to feel or be above others. You can see like the Abelian paradox, which someone else set up those rules you didn't, and agreeing to those which you don't, those rules, but yet not any capacity to be able to change those rules. And so you've got people in the past sort of looked at fear of not being part of the group. And then that fear sort of not being part of the group is like, and so and most are influenced by the group. And so it sort of impacts fear that people have of others and how someone could, as a groupthink, feel. Groupthink is really associated with fear, typical, and what risk could be existed that is a need for action where something is, and what you or I go to, what stream or what we would do, where the larger group can have had its thought, and where's your own individual thought about this, you see. It could be very different. Yet a lack of psychological safety where someone is in more of a dissident state, which is dissident, sort of doing what they can to control some stress within themselves. And so you can hear where someone's voice is and things. So in the note of G, of course, you've got an openness of all the chakras, and whereas in the note of A, which would be a voice that comes more from the head, sort of thing, you know. So where does the voice actually come from in the body? So an argument could be made that relative there's an ignorance, and there's a lot more ignorance and there's a lot more active behaviour stupidly going on in the world than there is, and there's an underestimation of the amount of stupid behaviour and things that's like that. And we think that something sophisticated is out there, but yet that can be not so at all. A difference really is in what motivates somebody, which really the motivating things really is your feeling of growing, learning, achieving, and getting recognition. And this is motivating you day in, day out. Whereas things that don't supply that sort of internal generator, something on the outside, like money that I've got to make to avoid some pain, and secondary negative consequences and things that relate, is called all sort of hygiene needs. So you've got motivation need, which is an internal generator, and then you've got other set of needs, which is sort of more external and not engaging much your internal motivator. And so the difference really in what motivates versus just something which is of some need, and how well somebody feels to be able to speak up relative to a track against what the group might have thought, yet to not rock the boat in the way what you could do this and have an elegance in the way that you disagree per se. Yet along with a group decision, it sort of really doesn't it really speaking to, or you are not sort of impacted, but you could become aware what the group think is. But what if you didn't, you just hadn't thought about those things, and sort of really suddenly something is prioritized more, a harmony more is where your decision is and your own creativity more. You've got a lot more pattern recognition about the things that you could see going on, and conformity and allowedness. So Abel paradox then can be more avoided, of course, but you've got a rigidity to keep a norm and a group think like anybody could study and look at the Bay of Pigs, for instance, as something that happened back in the past. If no one wants to overall challenge anything from agreement or not disagreement, and how agreement is, and where none can agree, you see, it's really the skill to find agreement, honest to God, and that is the most intelligent strategy anybody could have. But irrational fear and very lot of things which is unpopular, that you getting to have an action be seen of groupthink itself, and it's a herdedness, except for a stray maybe. And most cows all follow the herd, and consensus is of all taken accountedness of, and what self-referentialness is of a reasoning. Someone can be without seeing what the proper conditions are, you see. So it's like a lottery, being in a lottery paradox. It's like combining an overall wrong reason with an idea that the data that's going to impact how you decide about something, and the silence to avoid what conflict that exists where half and half is keeping you, where things are, but breaking motion, and being able to wire in new behavior generator is looking and seeing new ways to be able to do things, being able to have a feeling first, then hearing, and then seeing. And how do you use auditory words in your language? Can you hear auditory words being used, like to speak or to mention, to mention, to explain, and listen, versus getting a clear perspective or a frame of reference to be able to see, which is visual. So those are words which is auditory and visual words as predicates that sort of come into your language. And how is it that you, in whole brain patterning, are pretty much using kinesthetic, auditory, visual in your own processing and things. And so loops are there, and somebody could have a list of things within, and there's something is precognitive, meaning that something is brought before you've thought. And so that which is before you thought is the way that you would go about having done something, and what information and what channels are below that you're able to get information from, that your random finite generator will select bits of weighted information to cause the language and things that comes out in expression of things. And so a timeline of a cause and effect is like a flow of time, and without looking or anything, you've got self-referential sorts of statements which are very tricky, and it's like a lottery paradox. One ticket wins, but it shows how one could split a sense of what's combined data and the expectation of reality, and what really everything is about, by going along with something but not rocking the boat. And so adding more roads, for instance, where suddenly that slows all the traffic down by adding all of those roads. And so it's just like under Abelgate, and you have an Abel paradox for sure. And why should it not be something which you really investigate? Because you've got a core group that goes against what others might want, and then hesitancy where voices are disapproved, you see, and yet what's the true sentiment, more or less, of the group, and what would be the actual benefit, really. So in our podcast before, we just talked about a tote, a test, operate, test, exit. And so that is a chunk of behavior. It means that you've got some test that you have that comes out, and you've got an operative phase, and then you've got a test again, a sensory motor look or something, which then causes you to be able to exit from what that was. And so there's only three ways that someone can respond. There's two are with agreement, and then one is without any agreement. So the first two are ways that everybody can get everything done, matter of fact, and without having to polarize. But polarity can be just a knee-jerk how someone's processing information, because they're not even thinking about how they're processing it. But this work more might cause you to be considerate of it, because a lot of don't, want, can't, should, try, but, must, only, never, always is very exclusive and engages a lot of recursive types of language, which whole brain patterning and being more in I-aware is much more non-recursive. And to agree to agree with condition is more congruent and more meta-responsive in society and social conditioning than polarizing and looking for the opposite, what doesn't fit, what's obscure. But what's your preferred pattern in the way that you process information, you see? So it's really most you could see problematic where polarization is, where a lot of don't, want, can't, should, try, but, must, only is. It's a really like a long time ago operation. Popeye was used, where the warfare was during the Vietnam War, and today that's really quite fine tested, isn't it? In the way that you could just cause the wind to have one yacht win over another. So it's really what's recursive in history is continuous, habituated, aversive types of synesthesia. Yet that is all done because what's redacted is money mechanics, which should be focused on, because positive inducted currency is what we should all have, not negative inducted. And so fear, flight, fright, flee, freeze, fawn, and all those, the big Fs, lead to ever more polarization, and what's connected there, where stress was put, which didn't have to be, of course, and memory retrieval ever became hardwired to aversion because it was stressful, where somebody learned something, and so then when they had to retrieve that, it was state-specific with stress. And so then patterning could be from school onward, a lot of don't, want, can't, should, try, but, must, only, and there's no such thing as negation at the primary level of experience. Like, how do you not see a dog that's not chasing the cat? Or if I said, don't look and see a pink elephant with blue polka dots running across green grass, you have to have those things to know what not to. So it's more of a focus on being empty and being able to get rid of your inner dialogue, and being able to be receptive. And so how much rapport that you have with other people, and are you able to pace and lead where conversation is, these are ideas which you could have to be more successful. Whole brain functioning training ever allows more preferred modes of soil information that allow you to live more in the whole of yourself. So as you're moving toward, using direction this way to move toward, you're focusing on what's within, and you're using direction more this way versus looking outside and looking at what you're moving away from. If 27,000 people, I think it was, they really perished during the building of the Panama Canal. It's just an enormous amount of people that died building the canal. 27,000. We don't ever consider but all the building construction and things that's gone on in the past, and how many people actually lost their lives to build these things. The canal didn't operate anymore, and where geoengineering is, and water suddenly just dries up from the lake, and there's nothing left where something is. And all this time there was this, but it's sitting in the tropic, and suddenly, how come it's a drought right there, you see? But a body is similar, and you've got lipoprotein A, which is plaque which gets laid down inside the arteries of our body and alters fibrin and causes blood to be more clotted and breaking down. And B3, which is niacin, which you find in more whole food, vitamin mineral complex, all these assist to help clear up excess lipoprotein A. But who's bringing in foodstuffs which actually really has any enzyme in it, or even cold processed? And these are things which our product really has a bit of a focus on, or each one of them. And so would you say where the modification is going on, that's not something like what also goes on where people have a fog, or where all of a sudden salt is shifted when it shouldn't be? But what happens when that goes on because it so wants to hold water to itself, and it's not salt which should be there in the body proper, like dead salt, for instance. And so you've got quite a manipulation of the atmosphere and circulation of wind and things, and that geoengineering that's going on is quite vulnerable, ever more like some peace can be. And who decided that? Well, that area where that lake is certainly going to have a drought, whereas it's pretty good everywhere else. But statistics can show suddenly that something has gone on, and that's just manipulated. But you could look and see data that is definite. It's all being collected in a manner that's been manipulated. But banana republics are a lot where capitalized pledgedness is, where no right exists properly. And an octopus, wouldn't you say, actually took over that nation, and isn't that just private corporations that did that? And so isn't that the actual talk of it all? And shouldn't that be? Because that's just actually what's being redacted at the moment, isn't it? But what happens when a private group really has owned it all, and everybody's paying rent to Pope Boney? But to divide and conquer and massacre, of course, you've got a lot of conditions going on which under positive inductive currency, you just don't have any of that. But under negative inductiveness, you've got a monopoly and an elite and an entire market manipulation. And so it's just like small firms all get bought out by the bigger corps, which expands itself, which doesn't pay any tax, and then to monopolize all major industry and getting tax breaks so to pay the rich minority is 0.01%, and it's a criminal bank cartel of one world order owned outright, and all 197 odd nations is bankrolled by one group. And so where's the spontaneous creative intelligence and the positive inductiveness? An example of what this is, which is possible in a golden age, this is what comes to be where things are. But you could have a lot of contradictions going on that doesn't engage what this is, and religions and things that's like that, which all have beliefs and things which is sort of really, irrational. And so it really is. You've got like a knee voltage, a voltage at your knee, and you have to have at least a knee voltage where life colloid are to be able to function and to conduct proper affairs where your body is. And you've got carbon dioxide is more important than oxygen, and as important. And why isn't it that you're not talking about the value of carbon dioxide being in the body, because it's a smooth muscle dilator and you don't want to be breathing any of that off, but keeping it in this day. So, just the same as in electronic circuit and things, you've got diodes which conduct current rapidly, and you've got transformers, and you've got voltage conduction and things just like this, which is a relative heavy flow. And a transformer increases the primary current, increases dramatically more, and a secondary effect which goes on. So you've really got voltage that crosses over, and in physics you've got magneticity, and in neurology equipment can be made more to fit exactly like what goes on where biology is, or what life colloid is, and life itself, where the vacuum is being capped and you're getting energy directly from the vacuum without any input. And so, Chickenbutza's car sort of is an example today now of what a radiant energetic dynamo is. Yet that's just exactly what is the physics of things that goes on where the body is. And you've got a whole range of things. You've got ferromagnetics, you've got diamagnetics, you've got paramagnetic, you've got energy which weakly repels or weakly draws things together. And this is magnetic. And you've got celestial and terrestrial magneticity, and permanent magnetic static B field, and a dynamic current A field. And so temporary magnetron, state of material, and material which could be demagnetized, and things just like this sort of. So you've got like cerium and cobalt that come together, and you've got various transitional elements and things just like that, which we're only just starting to come to be considered of. But you and I, we had at least 72 plants every 3 months over the last 10,000 years or more, we would have. And so you've got, like bugleweed, and Lycopus europus. You've got ashwagandha, for instance, bladderwrack. I can think of rosemary, and all of these things are quite extraordinary for helping regeneration of cells, and to help clear away muscle ache and dry skin and these things. And here in depression, purslane is incredible because you're really going to get prostaglandin that assists to help make neurotransmitters and things just like that. And so lemon water and chia seed and juice is nature's operating table. You've got a whole range of things in, herbs, schisandra and things just like that, and wild teasel and sage and chamomile. And so these are things which really help with thyroid function, and fireberry and things just like that, which you can find in the digest aid in one of the products that we have. So it's extraordinary because you've got a radiant energetic dynamo where no input is needed, and you've got life colloid in this radiant energetic dynamo, which get from a JC quanta and pulling this from the vacuum, and you've got a red design that models exactly what this that's in nature within our body. And on a microscopic scale, you could see how what has no input is needed to have passively captured energy that's usable and control the load of this current under a steady state. And so there's T-junction, meaning tiny little spaces everywhere between the colloid. And that space is a T-junction, and something has to pass across that space. And so low frequency conditions, which is the switching of current on and off rapidly, and you could see a circuit which is connected and is picking up amperage from it. And so the body does this, you see, to process really high speed data. And life colloid DNA really is dense microprocessors for your memory, basically. And so maximal power really handles a voltage spike and resonance. And if you've got a harmoniousness, which you've got more 432 hertz, it's more harmonious sort of frequency. You've got a sustained conducted energy evermore, or where something was square beated out or square timed out, it's got more freeze in it instead. So no loss can be where superposition is, of course, you've got life colloid managing things and interacting, broadcasting its effect through superposition. And so today you've got various amino acids in the three amino acids that we popularized big time in our formulas. Because why? Because it has various metal oxide carrying ligands in it where no other amino acid does. And these metalloid semiconductive materials have field effect and as a transistor does. And so in the JC quantum in reality, you've got processing of digital signals without much of any power consumption whatsoever needed. And you've got a noble element, semiconductive field effect transfer. And it's called a NESFET, but it's structure. And so what exists more like where life colloid in magneticity, you've got magneton, and on a nano level, and a large current, which can be is being modulated, where a very small signal input is needed, and you've got solid state conditioning, which can heat or cool, like Peltier device. I designed more to do today, and so Chikumbutsu's machine that's been created, it's set up the same as our body does, from sodium, potassium, and a gate and a drain that is between the two, you see, and a voltage differential between sodium and potassium is a gate and a source that's determining a resistance. And so in the noble element, you have a semiconductive field effect transfer where energy is being captured from the B field by our mitochondria and by various brain structure like your eyes, which maybe it's something which we could get to in a podcast that we do. You've got a large voltage, which is really via a threshold voltage drawn, and no voltage drop where something is non-locally being drawn from. It's sort of things which stop and pinch off the voltage and close the channel, like very small compounds that are drugs that are being used, today, but that all shuts down respiration and are toxic, quite considerable. So you've got a knee voltage, which life colloid and cells actually have to have, and diode and a conductive current that is supposed to be, and what's your thought in the way that nutrients can be supportive of what this is? Like we talked about just only purslane, for instance, assisting you to have proper prostaglandin synthesis where you are, so that you could make neurotransmitters. So you've got, you've really got blue light and white light, and that's supposed to be balanced by red light. And when it's not, then it starts to have more of a bleaching effect. Of course, blue and white light stimulates dopamine to be produced as well, and slow but sure it could be robbing dopamine more from the body as well. So blue and white light bleaches out areas of the retina and things, so that fuzziness starts to come to be, and sharpness no longer quite is where eyes are, and the eyes become more lengthened in the size, and so the image doesn't fall on the back of the retina like it should. And so, like putting some ice on your wrist for 10 minutes, you'd be surprised how much that impacts your eyes the next day, because it's through reflexive connection. The eyes start to shrink where that is back, so that the size of the eye has shrunk some. And what does cold shock protein help? And the wrists and the eyes have in relation and connection to each other as far as temperature is concerned. But the rods of your eye, you've got rods and cones. The rods are sort of stacked like little discs, or with fluid filled, and plasma is spinning inside so radically. It could be spinning up to 10,000 revolutions a minute. The plasma, that each disc stacked condenses ever more dynamic current, which is harvested from a switching on and off circuit, which that's what a radiant energetic dynamo design does. And so just from ambient energy from the background, that's captured and used, and that's what clean energy is, which would come to be more. So the heavy petroleum and things just like this would be just much more like a dinosaur, incredible, and combustion engine so heavy, where that is no longer needed whatsoever, because you've got a capacity to have an engine without any moving parts, you see. And so light is converted into ultrasonic vibration by, and piezo-magnetic current is where silica is. And so H3O2 negative to H3O2 positive is what goes on, and energy goes and between those two types of water in our body, and energy is available upon demand. And what happens when you have a DC current that comes from this, that runs this NESFET type structure that we were just talking about here, this noble element, superconductive field effect transfer, a NESFET, and that's picking up ambient energy and turning that into direct current, which water does. H3O2 negative to H3O2 positive, which is life water, life hydrate, which is a product that we have helped someone produce more life hydrate and life water itself. And so that's the type of water which is hexagonal structured, which is more in our body. And so that's a type of water also which forms the glycan type of sugar molecule, which is supposed to be on the outside of cells, not modified by protein or fats, which protein and fat modifies these sugars and extraordinarily and changes that aminoglycan G clock, for instance, like immunoglobulin G is an example which could be collected from your saliva and looked at. You can see what the glycans are around your immunoglobulin G, and to see what type of immune condition that you have, or what your don't have immunity for proper, because immunity is being challenged. And how much does noble element, rhodium, osmium, and ruthenium, and these sorts of things really is part of what this is, because it's semiconductive. You've got a noble element semiconductive frequency effect transfer, that NESFET, and energy that comes about from this. And life, food, nutrient is best, which you could learn about this to have a greater functional plasticity, where the brain has the ability to be able to pick patterns out far more. And life colloid has dioxygenated dibenzoate pyrene molecule, which is a very powerful energy generator that's found in the life colloid, Jubb's life colloid. And you can find that in the body, in ovaries and testes and liver and kidneys and heart. And where organs are, where energy must be, you've got this dioxygenated dibenzoate pyrene molecules, which comes about from life. And so most useful substances like selenium, glutathione is produced from life colloid in your intestinal tract, and you'd be surprised how much, in fact, actually everything that's been produced more by life colloid in your intestine, and how much does it make sense for you to do Jubb cell rejuvenation, which you're doing a 42-day life food nutritional cleanse, and you're clearing up debris. So clean plasma, which is H3 negative and positive, you've got light, which is like echo ranged, and you've got 18 kilohertz, 20 hertz, and you've got various body structure, which is resonant at 40,000 hertz, for instance. So a 7.8 hertz is an inaudible sort of level, and you've got 10.36 sort of gigahertz when you're looking at RNA. You've got 40 gigahertz, where you're listening to a female voice, which is higher in hertz than a male. And so resonant frequency sort of really is a sound where a molecule is in vibration and resonance, and plasma inside the disc of the rods of your eyes, which manage light itself, and has NESFET structure, which within itself, to have the light that comes to be just not any input actual, but the input that's needed that causes you to be able to have a DC current that comes from this. And so producing clean power in a future moment, and having this from celestial and terrestrial radiation, which is captured on demand. You've got radio frequency that's 3 kilohertz up to 300 gigahertz, from 10 kilohertz to 100 gigahertz. And so radio wave and frequency. So you've got RNA, which is ribonucleic acid. It's like half the length of DNA. It's a meter in length rather than 2 meters in length. DNA is 2 meters in length and is in ELF waves. So high frequency, and the closer somebody is, you could come to more RNA. And so you've got frequency that relates to body parts, simple. So it's a visible light and radiomagnetics sort of that's going on, and satellite use of all of this. And we have superposition, which is a 10 zillionth of a meter of light conducted. That's how fast a JC quanta is. And so if we could keep in mind, of course, dark is fast and light is slow, and light comes out of dark, not the other way around. In the way that you and I will, we look at things, you've got noble element, semiconductive field effect transfer, this NESFET, and colloid of life have this a cavity resonant state, which picks up in real time energy that's from the surround. And so you've got dark and light impacting and getting absorbed more as information, and light comes out of dark, not the other way around. And so violet light, you could see some with your eyes down to 150 nanometer, where somebody's trained more, but otherwise maybe they only can see down to around about 350 nanometer normal vision. A wave travels, of course, through a PQRST fashion, and always does that PQRST fashion, which you can read out. But red has to balance blue and white light, and people can be having excess blue and white light, so put your red screen on more through the night for screens and things that you're looking at. And violet is the strongest frequency where the eye converts to direct current from the vacuum, and stepping light, down is a condensed condition, and where you're spreading light out. And so all where the vacuum is created, a B field is, and the B field space, like between the PQRST complex, is a superposition pulse. But you've got radio signals detected from distant galaxies. You've got 8 billion light years or more away, and you've got colors which stimulate mood, pink, purple, and color such, all blue, red. These are all colors. But Laniakea, you've got that line in the sky, which all the universe is falling into, and it's like a fern. When you go back and look at everything, it sort of looks like we've got big ferns from a tree in the sky. We've got far infrared radiation, which is a thermal heat range, and you have that, a range of that. And so Earth has a 0.65 Gauss to 0.5 Gauss, which is like massive amounts of energy at this, down there in this scale, you see. The body has a field 100 times smaller, of course, than Earth does. And this has been a bit of a problem for people who didn't look at that with like super quantum interference device, which does exist, that people get a bigger, deeper insight into plasma. But DNA and RNA emit magnetic flux and are based upon sort of superconducting loops and T-junctions between life colloid. You've got 12 micron thermal magnetic dynamic static field and resonant frequencies and things, you see? So radio waves and micron wave all are captured via noble element semiconductive frequency effect transfer. And energy is collected from this. So from light, you can step that down, and through the eyes, your brain ends up with a direct current, you see. And so this can have not been considered too much, but radiant energetic dynamos, what I've been talking about for a long while. And we can see Chikumbutsu's car sort of really is a good example of this, right? And it's mimicking things which really science has sort of known about, and free energy really is clean. But if everything is tied to the Vatican, and you've got Abelgate and Abilene, which you should look up the Abilene paradox. I think that's really a good one. You've got a Vaticanus and military industrial complex, and you've got Silicon Valley, and you've got one-armed bandits. And the mode that they use is more blue-white light and blacking the windows out. And so light from sound, and sound turned into light. You've got control of animals, charge basically going on where that is, and addictions ever being caused. Any change in neurotransmission which is problematic is the definition of addiction. And so it's remote and wireless and frequency dominated. but blue and white light slowly wears out all the dopamine eventual production, and can be caused of activities that relate to all of that to be more addictive. And the production of liquid crystal displays which deliver more blue and white light. You can see lots of research where DARPA is behind blue light and what negative impact white and blue light has, and where does far infrared fit into this? You've got anabolic and catabolic types of frequencies, you see. And sunlight energizes water to produce H3O2, which is this gel-like water, and which Life Hydrate does, which is a product that we have, which has got chlorophyll and hemoglobin, which are examples of like a nitrate cage around something similar to generate energy. So the eyes are giving us light, and that builds inside a gel, and so light sort of really is captured through the water and the quality of life, which have this gel within them, which is a Y-shaped water only that can interact with some enzymes, basically. And so water can appear in two other different ways, but H3O2 really is what life water is, and Life Hydrate makes that. And so you've got to have proper gastrin and secrete and digestive capacity to do this, and then that's the reason why somebody would want to clear away stone from their pancreas, to get back proper energy, which you can and should from free energy from nature. And so mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum all have oxygen and carbon dioxide and gases and things all rolled along to become sticky and come to be making up material which ends up the absolute material like kinetin, which makes DNA. And life colloid photon all make energy from UV light, and we create chromophore protein from such, and skin in the eyes. And we shouldn't mess that up, because otherwise you're getting a DC current, which causes red blood corpuscles sort of to be able to aggregate, fuse, and differentiate into all the various material of the body. And white gold that we have in our product, and the importance of rhodium, osmium, ruthenium, and palladium, and this transitional element provides this semiconductive field effect transfer, so that the microcurrent is collected and applied to energy in the body. And so, you're getting far more energy this way than you could ever get from eating. The bone uses light, and light, especially blue and white light, and blue and white light, and light like that overdone destroys aldosterone in its proper conditioning, which is very necessary to be able to manage salt and things. So all fixed conditions that isn't proper natural sort of really is something typical about an addiction relative, and radio waves converted into alternating current, and via rectification. You see this all in our body, and how that could be converted as back into a direct current. And so on a microsonic level, you've got an amplification of life colloid and superposition being active in a system. And so, down on this level, a nanometer, which is 1/1000th of a meter. So DNA is 2.5 nanometer, 7,000 nanometer wide is like a red blood corpuscle, and each double spore is made up of around about 7 nanometer. You see, pinhead, 1 million nanometer could be on, and so an atom is about 0.1 to 0.5 nanometer, for instance. Lithophils, calcium and phosphate are very small, 100 nanometers wide. And that's what makes stone in the pancreas, which you need to be able to dissolve, which is what the Jubb's program is about. So a JC quanta is a Jubbit in a scalar shape, a colloid of life. It could be down to 60 atoms of water. You see, a water molecule is 0.278 nanometers. Gold is about 0.3 nanometers, just to give you an idea of size. So you've got, on a microscopic level, you've got a macroscopic level out there in the universe, and you've got down inside the pores of the DNA, for instance, you've got a 30 to 50 sort of nanometer wide pore. And so just like when you're looking out into the sky, you see supercluster, and you see the huge line in the sky, the Laniakea, which stretches 10 billion light years across our universe. You can see the things that's happening on a very large scale, happening on a mighty scale as well. And we've been talking a little bit about this NASFET system, this noble element semiconductive field effect transfer, where energy is collected from the B field, and you can get an A field current from this. And so if you imagine just for a moment, which would be great for our listeners to look at, and that's life colloid. If you put 10 cubic centimeters of life colloid cubed, and you open all of them up, so you're only going to look at the radius, and you're going to open up the radius and all line them up into a straight line, and it's only looking at the diameter only, it's going to stretch 17 times the distance from Las Vegas to the moon, you see. So if you cook that, you're going to shorten the distance to just go from Las Vegas to Phoenix, you see. So it's just radically shortened the distance where cooking is, and heating and this sort of thing. So that's part of the reason why lots of nutrients like B6, B7, pyridoxine and biotin, B9, folate, these are things which are so heat sensitive, you see. So life food is more of an attention to enzymatic value, basically. A strand of DNA is only 2.5 nanometer wide. And then when you're cooking it, it's going to congeal it. It's no longer going to be on a small scale at all. It's going to be just congealed and coagulated. And how are you going to get anything from that? We don't really. Something has got to be more like how it did present itself relatively in nature. And so today in the industry, I guess you've got maybe 20 million transistors being made microscopically for every living being. Information is stored in the ether, and gamma and radio frequency is in between all of this. And your retina, is really light sensitive tissue. And what happens when there's an iron deficiency, or you've got excessive sodium, or you've got fats that have been entering the eyes? If you look, what about all the blue and white bleachedness that goes on? And so you've got, you could be looking a bit blue or blue-green or a bit yellow around the gills, or so it's called, and you're sort of missing the photored, which causes a great jostling of the energy in our cells. And so artificial light is going to be terrible for that, and light left on will be terrible as well. And some lights will be just very destructive, matter of fact, because you're supposed to have dark. So inverse gravitational effects goes from the north negative to the south positive, and so you've got an inverse gravitational effect going on where the body is and with craft and things. And the resonance is a node and a flux of a diamagnetic and ferromagnetic sort of neutron, which becomes a hydrogen. And so a force is outside which pulls everything apart. So neutrons could come out of something. You see, you've got life colloid transmutation of one element into another. And so you've got a magnogravitic effect, and you've got north negative always going toward a south positive. And you've got this use of things that's going on in the body. And if you get rid of the stones out of the pancreas, is all that's going to function better. It sure is. If you're going to be moving more toward life food, that's going to help, isn't it? If you're going to practice more whole brain functioning more, and we're going to use direction to move toward and have things within as a direction versus always having focused away and outside, that you could frame things positively. Are you going to have a lot more amplitude of energy? Yes. And are you going to be able to get into your frontal cortex? Yes. And so a photon that's carrying a JC quanta where light is the cause of sensitivity to where pieces of equipment will be in a future moment. Of course, you've got all sorts of nutrients, which is so important, that comes into ocean, wind evaporated, salt, for instance, which you're not going to find in a lot of other things, really. And so if somebody combines more how our red blood corpuscle is made by a process of aggregation, fusion, and differentiation, and how the red blood corpuscle is got polypotency and can become anything that's necessary in the body, and does, and that the cells of our body didn't arise through mitotic cell division as thought of, which it didn't, but arose through aggregation, fusion, differentiation. Maybe you pick up a copy of Colloidal Biology and Secrets of an Alkaline Body, which is a great work to look at into this. Colloidal Biology and the Secrets of an Alkaline Body. But you've got, keep in mind, this NASFET, where no input is really, you've got a radiant energetic dynamo where life colloid is, you've got energy being tapped from the vacuum, and providing that you've got various substances like leucine, for instance, and methionine, and you're able to make gastrin and secretin, which are substances which act upon food and your digestive organs. And so you always start by renewing your digestive organs. That's where you've got to start, because that's the biggest river, and then it's going to affect your lymphatics, and now it's going to affect microcirculation, but it's got to be more in disorder, okay? And so that's the secret. And so once you could understand, I've got a detox in a sequence of things. Yes, you do. That's right. And what would the importance of doing lemon bicarb shot in all of this? It's quite extraordinary, you see. So you've got a T-junction, which is the space between the life colloid, and you've got a vacuum of resonance, which part of the way up, you've got 6 feet of length of DNA there, which is an ELF wave, you see. And you've got radio and microwave and gamma energy collection that all provides a direct current in magnicity, and all such augments anything which is solid food diet for sure. And yet eating can never account for all that's needed energy-wise. And that's the reason why, you don't want to put sand in your camera or dust in the camera, because how are you going to get that out of the camera, basically, you see? Yeah. So I think that might conclude our second show, mate. Did you record today? What questions might there be, mate?
I know I'm spending too much time in front of these screens. My phone, my computer. It's like all day.
Yeah, so it should have a red screen over it, or should have blue, blue blockers. Um, yeah, I mean those are things which could be just starting to talk a bit more about the effect of all this sort of thing. Which uh, could the world start to wake up and start to talk about the effect of these things as well? I think so. I really do. Um, but anyway, over all the time that you've collected information, quite extraordinary. I think it's like some 2.5 million people have visited and got views and things of shows and stuff come to see all the work that you've compiled there. Quite extraordinary, mate. Anyway, I think you're really doing a good job. Anyway, so we'll keep these shows people listening to podcast wise to close to be like an hour or something, a time frame, and we'll see what we can do to keep going where things are. At some point we should really start to talk a bit more about the vestibular sense itself. Yes, and so maybe that's where we should lead off with our next show more and talk a bit more about the vestibular uh, and what that does, and then go more into this radiant frequency, energy dynamo, and how does that work more, this NASFET. And of course, it's exciting if somebody wants to look, they can see chicken butzos, jumping onto making vehicles which don't have any input needed. Yeah. So you drive off from the factory and don't have to fill it up or charge it up anymore.
Wow.
Mm. Helicopter, you just you don't have to come down.
Oh gosh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and driving a vehicle from Harare all the way to Cairo and back again. I don't know, it's like 14,000 kilometers or something.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing? Right. Yeah, so it's
I'm
sort of
looking forward to that.
uh, running on things which is done in a similar way as a NESFET does, right? Yeah, only with magnetic alloys instead of noble element. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm. Anyway, all right. Well, I think we should. There's a few things which we would go to talk a bit more about. That's the vestibular sense for sure, which is our first sense to form on Earth, and how is that involved in language and behaviour and things. Quite extraordinary, great topic. And I think we should get into a little bit more how a rheostat rectifier functions to be able to tap energy on demand, what nutrients and things that assist to cause this, how does the vestibular sense engage and involve where this is, and what can we see when we look down there at a microscopic level, like, things that are spinning and energy and little motors and things that's like this? Yeah. Um, so we can be talking a bit more about how do we get energy from the ether, and how clean lymph and clean blood is important, and how our program really assists and has targets DNA to help turn DNA around and help improve proper body function again. Yeah. All right.
Wow, that's
Well,
incredible. Thank you so much,
love
Dr.
you,
Joe.
mate.
Love you too.
Love you, mate. Catch up to you. Okay, come on.